Hello, I am Carista Creates, and today I am going to be showing you some tips and tricks for the creative pieces, the creative terrain pieces that came out, the modular rock galleries, the lava ones too, because they're such massive props and they're some of the only terrain galleries we have in creative mode right now. And there's not really a lot of ways to add detail onto them unless you know the entirety of creative mode, and unless you've been there in the beginning, which you probably haven't because Fortnite's been around for almost 4 years now. But fortunately I have been around since the beginning of creative mode, so I thought I'd show you some handy tips and tricks on how you can really make your builds better with just some seamless effort, which you did in like 10 minutes, but it looks like it took an hour. So one of the simplest things you can do is to take one of these, flip it around, and make it as big as possible, and you get this nice big terrain piece here. Now, while this might be good for filling up certain sections of your map, as you get closer to it, you can realize that, the textures are good, but they're not the greatest they could be. So how can you cover this up? How can you prevent things like this weird grass glitch and hitboxes like this? So one of the next things you can do is you can go into creative mode, you can go into galleries, and you can go filter it by nature and also terrain if you'd like, but we're mainly going to focus on nature because with terrain you could only do things like add some extra rocks. But when you're in the terrain filter right here, as you can see, there's ice and snow variants of trees if you want to add those if you're doing some snowy terrain. But for now we're mainly going to focus on just the green ones. So you could take out things like the grass gallery, the fall trees if you really like, but don't be afraid to go through some of these older prefabs as well, like the Haunted Hills Nature Gallery. Those might be some older trees, but they also have unique designs because Fortnite had a different feel than it does now back when it came out. So if there's something you're going for and you're not really getting, try to search through some of these and you might find something that you like. So now that I've thrown down some of these galleries that I've mentioned before, let's start actually placing them on our example right here. So one of the first things you probably know about is this bush trick. So the bush trick is quite simple. You get one of the chapter 2 and beyond bushes, and you just resize it a bit, and it makes for nice grass around your island, which is something you can do, but it's also something that's been done a lot. And it's always nice to see new, fresh ideas, but to be fair, this is a pretty good one. I mean, it doesn't look good right now because there's nothing else there, but you can cover up some of these glitches like I was mentioning before by just generally walking around your island and also noticing odd looking pieces of terrain right here. So you could have like one big tree right here, and you could add the bush trick but around the base of the tree, so that way you can't really tell what's going on unless you created the map. You know exactly what's going on. One of the next things I would recommend you do is you take, like for example here, we'll just use this island piece that we already have, and we resize it, but we don't just resize it by all, we resize the width, maybe it's a little thinner, maybe the height is way less, and then you can just end up resizing it and rotating it till point where you get a new unrecognizable shape. And this especially helps if you're going for rocky terrain, because now you have a smaller item, which means there's going to be more detail on it, as well as the fact that whenever you place it down, it becomes indistinguishable. You never know that this was this piece. So you can just you can keep doing that with one piece. It's kind of best to spread it out Like if I were to do it again, I'd probably rotate it in some way right here, and maybe this would all lead up to one big mountain. But I'd probably cover this part with another rock like this one. Well, no, this one's not green. With this one. It's always best to stick, especially when working with these pieces, it's always best to stick with the ones that match the most. So, whoops. So that way you always get, the grass always follows the shape. As you may or may not know, if I turn this sideways, the grass is on top here instead of just being on top here. So it's always best to work with the same variant. It's fun to mix in stone, but it usually works best if you're going to build a cave. In which case you should probably use some of the dripstone pieces for. Right now we're just kind of focusing on the lay of the land. Whenever you are placing down trees in creative mode, there are two important things to remember. You always want to rotate them every single time you place them, and as well as you always want to resize them just a bit. Sometimes it can even just be the height. I like to resize the whole thing just so it has a better proportion, but for some trees it works better if you just resize the height. So if you try to just make the height a little smaller on this tree, it does look a bit awkward, but on some other trees it looks just fine. So you really have to experiment, and you would probably know the best since you're creating the area. Maybe you're not creating a grassy area, maybe you're creating a snowy area with a bunch of dead trees. Would a dead tree look good resized? Probably not, but you never know. That's why it's always good to try things. The best thing you can do in Fortnite Creative is to try different things, because I've had many circumstances where I've been placing things and I've been like, okay, I'm gonna have this look this exact way, but whenever I try a different way, it ends up being better than my original idea some of the time. Well, actually most of the time. So I definitely would recommend not being scared to just wing it, because sometimes I just created this in like a few minutes, and I didn't think this piece was gonna work at all. Look at how long it is from the backside, but it blends in completely natural. I was trying to do something completely different with this piece, and it worked out. Something as simple as that can be applied to some of the biggest maps in Fortnite. This, if you ever have a mountain like this, something I would suggest is using this bush trick for covering up ledges like this one and something that doesn't quite look too good. So like maybe right here where you can't really tell how, like, see how this blends in here, doesn't blend in too well, or especially someplace like this. Then you can just take your bush. This is when I would recommend using the bush piece the most. And for the rest of it, you can use something like the grass. Now the grass is something that does take up a lot of memory, because you usually do end up placing a lot of grass. But if you can try to have your grass in one area, which is exactly what I'm not doing, but I'll show you an example now. If you have like one big grassy area, and if you use like some of these different pieces, you can definitely get away with it more than just covering your entire map with grass, because it takes up more memory for you, and in the end it might just not look as good. So personally right now I actually think these smaller patches of grass are better how they are spread out. But as you can see, when it's all in one big patch here, well, I mean, I didn't place them close together in the first place, but I also think it doesn't really match the rest of everything here. It's also important to keep in mind that I am playing with maximum graphics because I have one of the newer consoles for the new generation. So if you're looking at your screen and, oh, the shadows aren't quite like this, or, oh, this feature is more prominent and it stands out to me more because it doesn't match as well, then definitely cover up a lot more of those features, because I can't really see them as well as you would be able to. And now for the final piece of advice I'd have for you whenever you're building with these new terrain pieces. It is to go around having all these galleries in front of you is way better than just looking at them through your phone, because you can actually see, oh well, this kind of has this feature. Maybe you really like this part of the rock for whatever reason. So then you decide, hey, that'd be a good idea to put right here. And then, hey, it kind of matches. It kind of makes the land flow better than if it was not there in the first place. So it's definitely better to have all these laid out. And don't be afraid to use something that looks weird. So like this would usually be used on, well, I don't know, maybe like some sort of huge mountain. But who knows, maybe if you just tilt the piece a little bit and resize it down, you can have a little rocky area. It's like, hey, okay, so whenever you're going up this part of this huge terrain piece, there's a few rocks you can walk on, which usually aren't here. That's why like parts of this land look so bland. Not mean for that to rhyme, but you can just add in some of these like extra details. You can of course use the rock pieces, but look, see what I mean right here? You never would have thought for this to work, but it does, because this rock has a bunch of rocks on it, which helps lead up to the giant Rocky Mountain. And I would say that is about everything I would have to give for advice. Well, not everything. It's just specifically working with these green pieces. I do have some more tips and tricks that I will be showing off. But I think for now that's gonna do it, and I might just see you in another video. Goodbye. Could you tell it was really late when I'm recording this? My voice is never usually this dry, but it may or may not be 2 in the morning, so